Monday marks 15 years since Miracle on the Hudson. You recall, that's when U.S. Airways Flight 1549 made an emergency landing in New York City's Hudson River after being struck by a flock of birds shortly after takeoff. Thanks to the quick thinking of its pilot, all 155 people on board that flight were rescued. Joining us now in Studio 57, we are proud to say, is the commanding pilot of that flight, Captain CB Sully Sullenberger. He's also the former U.S. ambassador to the International Civil Aviation Organization. It's great to see you, Captain.
Good to be with you, Vlad.
So let me ask you a question that I often ask a lot of people who perform at high levels in their jobs. Do you reflect back on those 15 years? Do you look back at that moment? Because a lot of people say, you know what? I look forward. I don't think about the past. I don't think about my actions in the past. Are you that type of person, or do you reflect often on those?
We have to be like Janice and look forward-looking and look at our past also, to learn from it and try to improve going forward. And that's what I did as a pilot. I would mentally review every flight, always trying to make the next one better than the previous one.
Do you keep in touch with some of the passengers? I know that when you were interviewed on 60 Minutes, we spoke to some of the passengers. Yes. But in the years subsequent to that, have you continued to keep up with what they're up to?
Yeah, I saw a bunch of them last night.
Did you really?
Yeah, and we keep in touch with a lot of them. I haven't met every passenger, but I've met almost all of them. We're bonded because of this experience that we had together. We're like a big extended family.
Yeah. Can you just take us back? I know you've talked about this. It was in your book, and you've done countless interviews. But we have a younger audience here at
Yes.
CBS News Streaming, and so perhaps there are some people. You met one of our producers who was in high school, and there are probably some that were in elementary school when this happened 15 years ago. Can you just take us back? It was an ordinary day. You had flown this route several times. What happened?
You're right. And the people you're talking about are the ages of our daughters.
Right, exactly.
So I get that. Yeah, it was literally like 10,000 other days. It was routine until it very suddenly, shockingly became the ultimate emergency of a lifetime. And we knew it immediately. As soon as the birds hit us and destroyed our engines, and we had lost thrust over New York City at low altitude with only a few options, we had mere minutes to solve the problem before our flight path intersected the surface of the Earth. And
when you listen to the recordings of you talking to the control tower, where they say that do you think that you can make it back to the airport? You were so confident and definitive in your response, which is nope. We're going to do it here.
It was back to my days of being a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
And you have to control the workload by shedding all the things that you would like to do, but are not the most important things to do. So we had to set clear priorities, do the few things that would help us the most, that were the most essential things to make our situation better, but do them very, very well, and then have the mental discipline to ignore everything else we didn't have time to do as being only distractions.
As you probably are aware, a week ago, a panel blew off an Alaska Airlines flight in midair. Luckily, no one was seriously injured. One of the things I've heard from fighter pilots who have flown a variety of military aircraft and then transitioned to civilian aviation is you get a lot of the old school pilots who say, I've never been comfortable with computers controlling all the surfaces of the aircraft. Now, this wasn't a computer issue, seems to be like a human one with bolts. But I wonder what your take is on as aircraft become more modern, as artificial intelligence is introduced into our world. What's your take on the kind of jets you flew back before you became a commercial pilot to what we're seeing come off the assembly line today?
That's a very important question, especially at this time in the history of aviation, when we're using more and more technology. First of all, every pilot must have the well-internalized, deeply ingrained mechanical flying skills to manipulate the controls manually. But at the same time, we have to have a very in-depth knowledge of all the technology, what it's going to do, when it might do it, and always be able to be thinking way ahead of the airplane, so you're not trying to catch up. You have to, when you're flying fast, you have to be thinking 50 miles ahead because you're just going to be there in a few minutes. And so it requires a great deal of focus, of setting priorities, and having deep knowledge of how all the technology works, so you know what to expect and if it fails, what to do manually if you need to.
As you know, the FAA ordered the grounding of over 100 Boeing 737 MAX jets just a week after this incident happened. Back in 2019, you testified at a congressional hearing and you criticized Boeing's design failures. What do you think about, I mean, Boeing has grounded these jets. Do you think that these jets are safe? I mean, for the viewing public out there who's like, wow, like it was just a series of bolts that weren't properly tightened as far as we can tell. You know, a guy's shirt was ripped off. And I kept thinking to myself, we have a 1-year-old at home, a 1-year-old daughter. And I just thought, well, you know, the rule is that you can fly with a child and not purchase a seat if you keep them in your lap. You know, if you were in the seat behind that exit row, could have been disastrous. So what should people be thinking about, and what should Boeing be thinking about?
Well, first of all, I think that, you know, in terms of having children in someone's lap, I've always believed for decades that children deserve to be restrained safely just as adults do. And the airlines and passengers should put children in a car seat that's strapped in and is secure. You know, on our flight, we had a 9-month-old child who had to be held in someone's arms. Even though our landing was going to be hard and there was going to be a lot of deceleration rapidly. But in terms of this event, FAA, Boeing, the airline industry needs to do a deep dive and make sure that every part of the design of every airplane is as it should be, meets the standards. The FAA is now doing a review to make sure that when Boeing manufactures these window parts or anything else, that they are up to the standards that are required. So these potentially catastrophic failures cannot happen.
Captain Sullenberger, I think it's, you know, I'm sure when people say, oh, you're a hero, it's so great to meet you, you just say, I'm a pilot, I was doing my job, that's what you do every single day. But it's rare that we have somebody like you here in Studio 57, so it's really a great honor to talk to you this morning.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.